Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After my cousin died, my husband's hair turned completely white overnight. He resigned from his position and rushed back to the countryside. In front of everyone, he suddenly broke down, kissed my cousin's decaying, foul-smelling corpse, and wailed in agony. Why did you insist on applying to Yin University with me back then? If you hadn't, my family wouldn't have forced me to marry you. Emily wouldn't have had to marry that lame and hideous man. We wouldn't have been separated for more than 20 years. I couldn't bear my husband's harsh accusations and hysterical behavior. I directly asked for a divorce. Yet even then, he irrationally killed me in my sleep. Emily was dead, and as the ones who caused it, we deserved to die. The next time I opened my eyes, the village was alive with the sound of drums and firecrackers. It was the day the admission letter from Yin University arrived in the village. I looked through the crowd and saw my 18-year-old husband, Ethan, being celebrated in the center, while my cousin Emily stood quietly at the edge, watching with longing. I stepped forward boldly and called out, "Ethan Parker, if you leave for Yin University, what's going to happen to my cousin Emily Taylor?" "You really mean all that, Nora?" Aunt Martha asked in astonishment, facing the gaze of the entire village. I pointed directly at Ethan and Emily. "Aunt Martha, they're both standing right here. Why are you asking me? Ask them." Ethan and Emily were just 18 or 19. He was as handsome and upright as a young poplar tree, and she was as delicate and radiant as a hibiscus flower with dewdrops. Among the plainly dressed villagers, the two of them looked so strikingly beautiful that anyone would praise them as a match made in heaven. In our previous life, they had loved each other with all their hearts yet went out of their way to pretend they had nothing to do with one another. Because of that, I was deceived for so many years. Since they loved each other so much, wouldn't it be right for me to let them be together in this life? Unexpectedly, Ethan's expression turned cold. His voice was stern as he said, "Nora Taylor, you're making up baseless lies, slandering your own cousin's innocence. What exactly are you trying to do?" As soon as he said that, the villagers were stunned and confused. Emily's face turned pale in an instant, filled with disappointment and sorrow. I noticed the moment and deliberately raised my voice at Ethan. "You and Emily have been together for such a long time. Isn't today such a joyous occasion? The perfect time to finally make it public." Aunt Martha's eyes sparkled as she shook Emily's arm excitedly. "Sweetheart, when did you and Ethan get together? Now that my son-in-law got into Yin University, our family's life is finally about to change." Emily looked at Ethan with longing, but when she saw the deep furrow in his brow and how he pressed his lips together without saying a word, she could only mumble in protest, "Mom, it's not true. I'm not with Ethan." Aunt Martha's smile froze. My face fell quickly as the crowd began turning on me. "Nora, you're a college student too. Why would you spread such rumors about your own cousin? And Ethan, he's been accepted into university already. Why would you do something so mean and try to ruin your cousin's reputation?" "I'm not sure about this. Could it be some kind of misunderstanding?" Facing their noisy criticism, I spoke up clearly and methodically. "Everyone, don't be so quick to dismiss it. At the reed marsh, near the village entrance, there's a tree. On that tree are the names Ethan Parker and Emily Taylor carved side by side. And the new necklace Emily's wearing, the one with the unique stone, wasn't that picked up by Ethan from that same marsh and given to her? Ethan, stop hiding it. Isn't that handkerchief in your pocket the one Emily stitched together from scraps at the textile factory?" Quick as lightning, a boy named Tommy, standing next to Ethan, reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. Embroidered on it was the letter E. And that necklace with the stone? Plenty of people had seen it before. There was no point trying to hide it anymore. Some children among the villagers even laughed out loud. "We've played at the reed marsh. We really did see the carved names on the tree," one said. "Ethan," the other said Emily. "If you don't believe us, we'll take you there." The secret meeting spot, the love tokens, everything was confirmed. Ethan and Emily couldn't say a word in their defense. Aunt Martha burst into tears of joy. "Emily, what are you being shy about? This is a huge blessing. Your dead father must be watching over you from the other side." That's the only way our son-in-law could have gotten into such a great university like Yen University," Aunt Martha exclaimed, then took the opportunity to grab Ethan's arm. "Come on, son-in-law, let's head back and talk to your parents about your engagement." Emily looked pale as a sheet, and Ethan's expression was cold and uncomfortable. The two people who supposedly loved each other looked more like they were being forced to accept the truth of that love. It was ridiculous. In our previous life, Ethan and I were the only two students from our village to be accepted into a top university in the year 2000, Yen University. After that, we went to Beijing together, supporting each other through college. After graduation, we stayed in the capital for work, eventually falling in love, getting married, and raising a family. We never once had a major fight in 20 years of marriage. Our children used to say we were the living proof that true love exists. I even believed it myself. What more could anyone ask for? But all of it shattered in the 20th year of our marriage. Bad news came from the countryside. My cousin Emily had committed suicide by drinking pesticide after enduring domestic abuse. Emily and I had never been close growing up, and after moving to Beijing, we barely kept in touch. I thought it was just a sad but distant tragedy. But that night, my husband came home from work and happened to see the funeral message on my phone. He froze like he'd been struck by lightning. He locked himself in the study for the whole night, and when he came out, his jet black hair had turned completely white. My children and I were stunned. Without a word, Ethan gripped my wrist tightly and said, "We're going back to the countryside to apologize to Emily." It wasn't until we returned to the village that I began to understand what he meant. The moment we stepped off the long-distance bus, Ethan disappeared. I searched desperately for him, and finally found him in the middle of nowhere. He had dug up Emily's grave. I watched in horror as he smashed open the coffin lid with a rock and pulled her long-dead, rotting body into his arms. He sobbed uncontrollably while kissing her decomposed lips. Her body had been decaying for days. Her lips were so deteriorated that when he kissed her, part of her upper lip detached and stuck to his mouth. I gagged violently at the sight, my stomach churning so hard I had to bend over and dry heave. Ethan, his entire body soaked in the pus and grime from her corpse, with bloodshot eyes and part of Emily's decayed lips still clinging to his mouth, staggered toward me like a madman. He roared at me. "Why did you insist on going to Yen University with me back then? If it weren't for that, my family wouldn't have forced me to marry you. Emily wouldn't have had to marry that lame, ugly freak. We wouldn't have been separated for 20 years. The stench of death wafted toward me with every step he took. I didn't dare stay a second longer. I turned and ran back toward the village as fast as I could. It wasn't until much later that I fully understood the truth. Ethan and Emily had fallen in love when they were young, but since Ethan had to leave for university in Beijing, they had no choice but to start a long-distance relationship. During those 4 years, Ethan gradually reduced contact with her. Emily, realizing she couldn't waste her youth waiting for a fading romance, married a man named Eric who had been disfigured and crippled in a traffic accident. Meanwhile, Ethan, pushed by his family, started dating and eventually married me, who had been on the same academic path. It wasn't until 20 years later, when Emily died, that Ethan was suddenly overcome with unbearable grief and regret. But instead of facing his own guilt, he turned it all on me. In the days that followed, Ethan lost all control. He went around spreading lies and rumors. The gossip in the village spiraled out of control. Relatives and neighbors began accusing me. "This woman's heart is the most poisonous. You did all this just to keep Ethan for yourself. You drove Emily to her death." I tried to reason with them. Wasn't it Ethan who broke up with Emily? Wasn't it Emily who chose to marry someone else? You don't even know the full story of their relationship. How can you blame me for something that ended more than 20 years ago? But some villagers, like Grace Coleman, who had always been close with Emily, "You confronted me publicly, didn't you? Ethan and I went to Yen University together, and then got married. If that hadn't happened, how would Emily have ended up with Eric? Oh, Emily, you had such a tragic life. Why is it that Nora got to steal the man you loved and live happily ever after while you were left with nothing but despair and thoughts of suicide? It's just not fair." Eventually, even my own parents turned against me in confusion. It's all your fault for insisting on going to Yen University. If only you had given your spot to Emily, none of this would have happened. She was such a good girl. You just had to compete and get into that university. Wasn't that enough? Why did you have to steal Ethan too? I tried to explain, Dad, I got into university through my own hard work. Why should I have given up that chance for Emily? Emily didn't even recognize all the letters of the alphabet. How could she have made it through night classes, let alone college? Mom, when Ethan and I were discussing marriage, did he or Emily ever say a word? If either of them had spoken up even once, I never would have spent half my life as his wife and the mother of his children. But my parents only cared about how they looked in the village. All they did was scold and blame me. I was constantly humiliated and wronged. Here I was completely disillusioned with Ethan, so I went ahead and asked for a divorce. But on my last night in the village, someone came in the dark and pressed a pillow over my face. Emily is dead. We are the ones who caused it. We deserve to die. In the next life, I will never choose you and abandon him for the sake of my future. Don't get in my way next time. Too bad I don't know why I was reborn. I couldn't escape them forever. So now that I've been given a second chance, I want to see exactly how deep Ethan Parker's so-called love for Emily Taylor really is, and how long it can last without me in the picture. While Ethan and Emily stood frozen like statues, dazed and speechless, Aunt Martha and the excited villagers dragged them off toward the Parker home to discuss marriage. I turned and ran straight home to write an anonymous report. The next day, I told the school I was heading back to express my gratitude to our mentor, but in reality, I planned to deliver that report to the county office. Halfway there, Ethan, young and impulsive, managed to intercept me. Nora, when exactly did you find out about us? After Emily's death, Ethan didn't just dig up her grave. He also wandered around the village like a ghost, haunting every spot tied to their past. Of course, I figured it out. I had no interest in indulging him. Get out of my way. You think it's appropriate to be grabbing your future sister-in-law in public without even thinking. He snapped. What sister-in-law? There's nothing between me and Emily. Why do you keep meddling and trying to tie me to your cousin? I stared at him, dumbfounded. Wasn't he the one who loved Emily to death? How could he say something like that? Clearly, Ethan was far more reckless and emotional. Ion ally volatile in this life, he couldn't hide a single thought. I spoke up, full of righteous indignation. My cousin Emily risked being expelled to steal high-quality fabric from the textile factory just to make you a shirt. You're literally wearing it right now, and you have the nerve to say there's nothing between you. Ethan's angry gaze flickered with a trace of doubt. You even know about that? I raised an eyebrow. What do you think? Our families might not have been close these years, but we still share the same blood. Just because Emily's family has no man left doesn't mean you get to act like some heartless cheater. The Taylor family still has people to speak for her. Ethan looked both shocked and furious. He had assumed Emily was a leaky sieve who had spilled all their secrets to me. Once suspicion takes root, it only needs time to grow. Eventually, it will bloom into something far more damaging. I took the opportunity to stomp on his foot. Get out of my face. If you keep talking to me like I owe you something, I'll tell Aunt Martha that you're the one who doesn't want this engagement. Let's see how your family handles that. With that, I stormed off. After delivering the report at the county office, I even made a stop at my old school for the sake of appearances. It still looked just as worn down as I remembered, moss-covered steps, ivy curling around the low classroom buildings. My mentor lit up when he saw me, excited and pleased. This new century is off to a great start. Who would have thought this year's college entrance rates would break records? And you, Nora Taylor, were even accepted into Yen University. What an achievement. I smiled and nodded. Getting into Yen University had indeed been one of the proudest moments of my life. Thinking back on my 20 years of marriage in my past life, it wasn't all misery. I had success in my career, made meaningful progress in research, and raised 2 intelligent children before Ethan killed me in his madness. My eldest son had already gotten into a top university in Beijing, and my daughter was about to take her entrance exams. Their futures were full of promise. My research was also on the verge of a major breakthrough, but Ethan destroyed all of that with his own hands. Completely unaware, My mentor went on praising him in front of me. Ethan Parker was an exceptionally bright young man too. You and he were the top scorers that year. Both of you made it into top universities in Beijing. A faint shiver ran through me. Everything brilliant and successful in Ethan Parker's life had begun the moment he stepped into Yen University. Now that I had been reborn, simply tying him to Emily Taylor for life wasn't enough. He had destroyed my life. Wasn't it only fair that I destroy his? Just then, Eric suddenly called out to a tall, broad-shouldered man downstairs. I looked over the railing. The man had thick eyebrows, large eyes, and sharp features, handsome, with a face that felt oddly familiar. He didn't come up the stairs but introduced himself. "Eric's my uncle," he said. "I just got out of the military and moved back here. I run a small transportation business in town, and this here," he gestured to me, "is Nora Taylor, one of the few students in our school this year to get into Yen University." I turned to Eric, surprised. His background matched exactly. He was the man Emily had married in my past life. After her death, I had seen him a few times from afar in the village. Back then, he had a crippled leg and severe burn scars covering half his face, nothing like the man standing before me now. He had a 6-year-old boy with him, his nose constantly running. People said he'd adopted the child from a fallen comrade because he couldn't have children of his own. Eric caught me staring and teased. "Do I look like I've got 3 heads or something? Why are you staring at me like I'm a ghost?" Caught off guard, I asked awkwardly, "Do you know Emily Taylor?" He grinned. "Never met her, but I just got introduced to someone named Nora Taylor." I stumbled over my words. "I am sorry. That was rude of me." I still didn't know how Eric had ended up so broken in my last life, but now that the whole village knew about Emily and Ethan, there was a good chance she wouldn't marry Eric this time around. As I was leaving with my mentor, he suggested that Eric give me a ride, but I politely declined. I worried that if Eric met Emily too early, it might affect my future plans. I didn't get home until dinner time. My father sat silently at the table, his face clouded with anger. He couldn't yell at me directly, not after I'd just been accepted into Yen University. My mother jabbed a finger at my forehead. "Some things are better left unsaid. Look at the mess you've stirred up." It turned out that after Aunt Martha had led a group of villagers to the Parker household the day before, a fight broke out, just as expected. Aunt Martha had hoped Ethan and Emily could get engaged before he left for college in Beijing. The Parker family exploded at the suggestion. Ethan was the pride of their lineage, the first to get into a prestigious university. There was no way they'd let him marry some fatherless, unpolished country girl before even stepping foot on campus. The Parkers accused Emily of being shameless, of seducing their college-bound son. But Aunt Martha had been widowed young and had a sharp tongue. She fired back that when Ethan was taking advantage of her pure, untouched daughter, he wasn't a university student yet either. What, now that he had made it big, he could just pretend she never existed? They fought for hours, but in the end, nothing was resolved. The conflict was left hanging in the air. This morning, Aunt Martha even came to our house begging my father, the village chief, to step in and mediate. Hearing all this, I feigned shock. No wonder Ethan had shown up earlier, furious that I'd forced him into a public connection with Emily. So the Parkers had never intended to take responsibility for what Ethan had done. They wanted all the benefits of a secret relationship. Ethan's favor. Don't say things like that. Ethan got into Yen University. There's no way he'd do something like this. I fanned the flames. College entrance exams test intelligence, not morality. If all he cared about was studying, why did he get involved with Emily at all? The truth is he really did like her. Otherwise, why would he choose to apply to the same university she dreamed of? But he's clever. He wooed her in secret, swore her to silence, so that once he left the village for college, no one would know. If she got tired of waiting, he could blame her for moving on. If she stayed loyal, he could just send a letter saying they weren't right for each other. He'd never have to come back. No one in the village would even know they were a couple. The more I spoke, the deeper my father's frown became. My mother chimed in. Emily was such a fool. Ethan told her to keep quiet, and she actually did. I scoffed. Look at him now. Can either of you honestly say he didn't plan his escape route from the start? If Emily had tried to speak up, She would have been the one ruined, and you're blaming me for calling out the truth. That finally broke my father's composure. I thought Ethan was a good kid when he got into university. I really did. How could he even think that way? My father muttered before storming out the door. My mom called after him, asking where he was going so late. He was furious. Heading to the Parker household, he snapped. I won't let some scandal play out here like a bad opera, turning our village into a laughingstock for outsiders. As the village chief, my father personally stepped in. After a few rounds of back-and-forth negotiations, the Parkers finally relented. They agreed that before Ethan left for college, he and Emily would at least get engaged. In the countryside, it wasn't uncommon for young people to marry early. Engagements came before legal paperwork. To the Parkers, it was just a way to quiet the villagers. Aunt Martha, however, was no fool. She knew there was always a risk they'd go back on their word. So she asked for $30,000 as an engagement dowry. In the year 2000, $30,000 was a huge amount for our village. I looked at him sideways. Don't compare me to animals. They burst out laughing, unable to help themselves. Once they settled down, I spoke coolly. So what if someone's a college student? Does that give them the right to lie and ditch their girlfriend to push her into a river? If Ethan really killed someone today, the whole village would have a murderer on its hands. You think that's funny? Outsiders would mock us to death. The laughter stopped cold. None of them spoke again. Right and wrong rarely matter as much as people think. Only when personal matters escalate into public scandals do they truly achieve the outcome I'm aiming for. This was exactly the kind of public shaming Ethan had once used to crush me. And now it was his turn. When we got to the police station, there wasn't much Tommy and the others could do. They loitered around the lobby, loud and out of place. My dad arrived not long after, and frowned the second he saw them. What are you boys doing here? Are things not messy enough already? Then he spotted me among them. And you, what are you doing stirring things up? I raised an eyebrow. Dad, Ethan just tried to kill Emily. This is a criminal case. You're not going to be able to mediate this one. His eyebrows twitched. I could tell even his heart was feeling the strain. 2 university students had finally come out of our village, and now one of them was a murder suspect. The public backlash would be brutal. My dad started climbing the steps to the second floor, his legs visibly trembling. Just then, Eric came down the stairs and spotted me. What are you doing here? Are you okay? Before I could answer, a commotion broke out upstairs. Ethan, fresh from his rebirth and now in an emotional spiral, was resisting the police. They had to restrain him as he twisted against their grip. He craned his neck past the railing and shouted down. Eric, don't go. Emily's your wife. How could you not recognize her? I just got back. I don't even know how this happened. I swear I didn't try to kill anyone. Then his gaze locked onto me, standing unharmed below. Nora, you're alive. The fear and disbelief in Ethan's eyes were real. You and Eric, what are you doing together? Neither Eric nor I said a word. We just stood there watching silently as the police dragged him back into the interrogation room. On the stairs behind me, my father's legs gave out beneath him. It was such an awkward situation. Neither here nor there. My father mumbled under his breath. Is he insane? Eric had just happened to be passing by when he saved her. After the police finished taking his statement, they let him go. I invited him out for a bowl of noodles since we were both starving. As we ate, Eric glanced curiously at Tommy, who was sitting beside me. They were both clearly dying to know what had really happened, so Eric casually recounted it. I drove by the lake and saw a girl flailing in the water, screaming for help. I stopped the car and jumped in to save her. That's all. I had no idea this was some kind of attempted murder. Just as I was pulling her out of the water, I heard someone shouting that someone had fallen in. Then that whole van of TV reporters showed up out of nowhere, like they'd been dropped from the sky. Seriously, what are the odds of all that happening at once? I couldn't help but ask, was today the first time you ever saw Emily? I added. Eric looked at me deeply. Why does everyone assume I should know her? Are you suggesting this whole thing was some kind of setup between me and her? Tommy immediately blurted out. No way. All of us turned to look at him. Tommy clarified. If this was a setup, it had to be Emily's doing, and the goal would have been to marry Ethan more easily. Not nearly drowning herself. Now that Ethan and Emily are at odds, how could she have gained anything? Yeah, I added quietly. What would she possibly get out of this? As someone who had lived 2 lifetimes and had worked alongside plenty of women, I had a pretty good idea of what Emily had wanted, but now everything was falling apart. Eric gave us a helpless smile. I just saw someone in danger and acted. As for the real truth, that's up to the police to find out. Then he asked, by the way, that lunatic Ethan or whatever, he's not your village's other top student who got into Yen University, is he? Tommy and the others shared embarrassed but polite smiles. At this point, it was clear outsiders were laughing at us. That same evening, the TV station that had passed through the village quickly edited and broadcast the segment during the prime time slot. The story instantly went viral. The episode reconstructed the entire event that day. Emily had invited Ethan to the lakeside to talk about the $30,000 dowry and their engagement. No one knows what went through Ethan's mind, but while Emily stood at the edge of the water looking out, he suddenly hugged her from behind and whispered, "You want $30,000 that badly? I'll burn it for you." Then he pushed her into the rushing river. Emily could swim, but the lake bed was full of thick tangled weeds. Her foot got caught, and that's how she began to drown. Even after hearing her cries for help, Ethan didn't turn back. He just walked away. If Eric hadn't been passing by in his truck, Emily likely would have died. After everything, their relationship was ruined beyond repair. Emily insisted it had been an attempted murder, and Ethan acted completely deranged, spouting nonsense about people's pasts and mixing up names and details. According to him, he had killed someone, but not on purpose and not Emily. He said he had killed me. The Parkers, panicking, applied for a psychological evaluation. The result? Ethan was officially diagnosed with paranoid delusions. In the end, the case was settled out of court. Emily received $30,000 in compensation. After receiving the money, she and Martha left the village. Ethan was transferred from the detention center to a psychiatric hospital. Naturally, Yen University refused to admit a mentally unstable student with a criminal history. In this life, Ethan lost everything. His future, his love, and became a disgrace, a complete madman. The broadcast caused an uproar in the region. Outraged viewers flooded to the Parkers' house. Pelting it with rotten eggs and cabbage, several of their windows were shattered. Villagers didn't hold back either. They cursed and gossiped nonstop. My father sighed constantly. He even found a few new white hairs. How could the TV station air something like that without informing us first? He mumbled. The Parkers finally had a kid smart enough to get into Yen University, and now I cut in. No, Dad, the Parkers finally produced a criminal suspect. What's the point of blaming the TV station? My dad glared at me, and my mom rushed over to tug my arm. Don't make your father angrier. You got into Yen University, you'll build your career in the city. But the Parkers, their son may end up in the city too, but at least their grandkids would return to the village. Ethan was their rising star. He was supposed to stay tied to this place. And that's when I finally understood why my father had always been so protective of the Parkers. After I left for college, my father stepped down as village chief. In truth, the villagers would have been happy to let him stay on, but he felt utterly humiliated. If he hadn't been the one to push for Ethan and Emily's engagement, Ethan might never have turned violent toward her, or ended up mentally broken. Deep down, my father blamed himself, but even deeper, he quietly resented me. He believed that if I hadn't exposed Ethan and Emily's secret relationship, none of the chaos that followed would have happened. Of course, he never dared say that out loud. After all, I was now his last source of pride, his daughter who'd gotten into Yen University, and to him, nothing mattered more than saving face. 8 years later, I graduated from Yen's graduate program and joined a multinational corporation. During a business trip south to Guangchang for the Canton Fair, I unexpectedly ran into Emily again in a 5-star hotel. She looked stunning. Her figure was slim, her makeup sharp and bold, her clothes expensive. She held a child in her arms and was grilling a hotel staff member with an aggressive tone. "You'd better tell me, did Mr. Wu in room 330 bring some Vicks in here for a hookup?" The staff looked visibly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I really can't disclose that information." Wearing sunglasses, I slipped past quietly in the hallway. I later changed rooms to another floor entirely. Honestly, I didn't want to have anything more to do with Emily. That fiery red lipstick of hers always reminded me of a certain deranged, haunting image from the past. A lot of people's fates had changed in this life. Eric got married and had children in our hometown. He was now a rising manager in a transportation company. Life had treated him well this time. He never became the disabled, disfigured, abusive man he was in our past life. As for Emily, she seemed to have married well too, though her marriage looked rocky. Her wealthy husband at least gave her a materially comfortable life, compared to the tragic end she once met as an impoverished village wife who drank pesticide to escape domestic abuse. This was a major improvement. I still had more days to spend on this business trip in Guangcheng. A few days later, I ran into Emily again, this time in the hotel lobby. She wasn't wearing makeup, and there was no child with her. Oversized sunglasses covered the swelling and bruises on her face. She was shouting into her phone, clearly enraged. "If you want to die with that home wrecking, go ahead." I said a few words and she replied, "You dare lay a hand on me? I hope your car crashes and you get killed." Her voice was sharp and wild, drawing stares from everyone around. Ironically, Mr. Wu, she was cursing, her husband, was a mid-level executive from one of our company's partnering suppliers. He had recently dined with our team during the fair. Not long after, the partnership fell through, and then Mr. Wu was indeed in a car accident. He was left paralyzed from the waist down. I never saw Emily again after that, but something had started to make sense to me. That certain things in life seemed destined to repeat, as if patterns were etched into fate. Circumstances may change, but people's hearts rarely do. On the day I left Guangcheng, I received devastating news from home. My father had suffered a stroke. The doctor said the end was near. I quickly changed my flight and rushed back, dusty and exhausted, straight to the hospital. In the room, my family sat in silence, and so did the Parkers, their faces full of shame. It turned out my father had gone to visit Ethan in the psychiatric hospital. He'd been overwhelmed by guilt and sympathy, and something he saw there frightened him so badly that he collapsed. Soon after, on his deathbed, my father had been holding on, waiting for me. His expression was tortured, like he had something he desperately wanted to say, but in the end, he couldn't speak at all. As much as I resented how he had always cared more about appearances than anything else, I still felt a dull ache in my chest when he closed his eyes for the last time. In my previous life, my father had at least lived for more than a decade beyond that point, but this time his life ended early, all because of Ethan. Standing behind the hospital room's railing, I looked across at the disheveled, hollow-eyed man sitting in the corner. Ethan, now a complete madman. I asked coldly, "Why did you get to come back too, Ethan?" "Come back?" Ethan repeated, turning the words over in his mouth like they were foreign. Then he gave a bitter laugh. I thought this was just a parallel universe, that our paths were different because the timeline had diverged. But you're right, I was reborn. He looked up at me and smiled in that same old twisted way. "Wife," he said, still calling me that as if we were back in our past life, still taunting me. So I tore off his mask without hesitation. "You've been pretending to be crazy for 8 years now," I said. "That takes serious dedication. You kept up the act for our entire 20-year marriage too, playing the good husband, the good father." I sneered. "But thank you for that performance. It helped. You made me realize something. In our last life, you were trying to use insanity as an excuse to dodge a murder charge. But what I don't understand is, if you were so committed to your perfect image, your polished act, why kill me?" Ethan's smile deepened, full of provocation. "Because I loved Emily. And when she died, I regretted everything. I blamed you for tearing us apart. So I killed you," Ethan said, "and then planned to kill myself just to atone to Emily." Huh? Isn't that reason enough? Now that I had been reborn, I saw the so-called love between Ethan Parker and Emily Taylor for what it really was. Nothing more than a shallow, fragile romance from adolescence. There was no real depth or substance. I snorted. "We've lived through an entire lifetime, and you're still putting on this act. Who are you trying to fool?" Ethan stopped smiling. He finally dropped the pretense and began venting the resentment he had been building up toward me for 2 lifetimes. I misused some company funds. It was just a small amount, just a few million. I told you I wanted to sell the 2 houses we owned, but you wouldn't agree. We were married for 20 years. Most of the money came from me. You held up in your lab, buried in research every day. You have no idea how hard it was for me out there, bowing and scraping to clients. We both graduated from Yen University, but you stayed in the public sector, safe and stable, while I slogged through the private world, hustling and suffering. So tell me, why shouldn't I be able to use that money? I let out a cold laugh. We agreed when we got married how we'd divide responsibilities. One of us would stay in the system for stability, the other would go into the private sector for opportunity. That way we'd balance income and adaptability. For 20 years, I took care of the home, handled the chores, managed your daily life so you could focus fully on your career. But now, the pressure and setbacks you faced in your own work, you turn around and blame me. So because I didn't let you sell the house, you decided to kill me? Ethan wouldn't look me in the eye. He just shouted louder, trying to cover his guilt with rage. I was getting chased by debt collectors every day. They threatened to ruin me, and then Emily died. So I brought you back to the village to let you experience what it felt like to be hated, humiliated, and spat on. I knew you wouldn't obey me willingly. I just wanted to make you listen. But how dare you bring up divorce? Ethan Parker was a pathological, performative narcissist, obsessive, unstable. Maybe in our past life, what he really wanted to kill wasn't me, but the fact that I refused to obey him. I went further, tearing off the last shred of his hypocritical mask. So you killed me because I didn't obey you? Fine. But what about Emily, your precious first love? She obeyed you completely. She believed your promises. What did she get in return? Ethan was speechless. For once, he had nothing to say. You're disgusting, Ethan. He gave a twisted chuckle. Disgusting? Please, I kissed her corpse. A little shamelessness compared to that. His laughter faded and confusion replaced it. After all that, I still failed the psych evaluation. Then his eyes turned bleak and lost. I didn't expect to come back. I opened my eyes and suddenly everyone said I'd killed someone. The whole world had changed. Everyone looked so young, but everything was completely different. Life's so unfair. I got a second chance only to fall into ruin. What was I supposed to do? Pretend to be crazy again? Of course, it was only then, seeing things from his point of view, that I realized how absurd the beginning of this second life must have been for him. 8 years of madness. He must have pieced it all together by now, especially the truth about what happened with Emily. I couldn't hold back anymore. Ethan, you brought this on yourself. In our last life, you toyed with Emily's feelings. She died, and you didn't even let her rest in peace. So this time, she turned the tables on you, and honestly, you deserve it. Ethan's face twisted with rage. He shouted at me. Nora, you act like you hate me. But aren't you the one who plotted everything? Didn't you out me and Emily in front of the entire village? I looked him straight in the eye and told him what I had already figured out. You really think you and I are the only ones who came back? Both of us were reborn at the same moment, right after death. But did it ever occur to you that Emily's suicide might have been the true trigger? That she might have come back too? After all, she died before either of us. Ethan was visibly shaken. He stared into space for a long time before finally piecing together all the confusing details of the past 8 years. Emily, she had been reborn too. She came back even earlier than we did. I picked up where his realization left off. Emily's biggest regret in her past life was probably not being able to marry you. When she returned to this life and I publicly exposed your secret relationship, her first instinct was still to protect you. But then reality hit. Everything could be redone, so why didn't she just go with the flow and change her fate? She really did want to start over with you, but what did you do this time around? No matter how the world changes, people's hearts tend to stay the same. Ethan, from the very start, you never really respected her. You just toyed with her. After your secret was exposed, you didn't defend her. You mocked her, belittled her, even suspected she and Martha had schemed together to extort you for money. You directed all your worst assumptions at her, just like you once turned your bitterness toward me when your own career fell apart. Emily may have been reborn, but she wasn't the same naive, soft little flower anymore. After all the humiliation you threw at her, how could she not become darker? You betrayed her heart, and no one deserves to be used or discarded. If you had the right to manipulate her, then she had every right to turn the tables on you. Ethan's eyes widened in sudden understanding. Don't push her into the water. Emily framed me. She planned everything. The lake is so far from the village. How did Grace Coleman just happen to see her fall in and yell about it in public? How was it such a coincidence that the man who saved her turned out to be Eric? He clenched his fists, rage bubbling to the surface. I'm going to kill her. She set me up. Watching his pathetic, powerless fury, I laughed harder than I ever had in either lifetime. I couldn't stop. It was so satisfying. Ethan snapped out of it and glared at me red-eyed. What are you laughing at, you bitch? I said calmly. You can plot all you want, Ethan, but you're no match for fate. If you hadn't been reborn at the exact moment someone called you a murderer, if your first reaction hadn't been to fake insanity, do you think the case would have gone your way? I believe the police probably found something back then. But your so-called mental condition, and the fact that your family got ahead of the investigation and filed for psychiatric evaluation, meant the legal system could never accept something as absurd as rebirth. That's why in this life the insanity defense worked, and the case ended in a private settlement. You got exactly what you wanted, Ethan. You became a certified lunatic. Visiting hours were over. I turned to leave, laughing as I walked away. You really thought I was the one who ruined your life? You'll never climb back up. A lunatic stays a lunatic forever. Why would I need to waste my time bringing you down? Ethan understood, and for the first time, I saw true fear in his eyes. Nora, please, I was wrong. Don't go tell them I'm not crazy. But I only walked faster. Then he shouted behind me, desperation turning cruel. Don't you want to know what I said to your dad that scared him so badly he had a stroke? I paused, but I didn't turn around. No, I said coldly. My dad cared more about appearances than anything else. If he had a stroke, it wasn't for my sake. It's because you knew something shameful about him. And if it was too shameful to face, then it couldn't have been anything good. He should pay for his mistakes, just like you. Back in the ward, Ethan broke down in tears. Nora, we still had 2 children together. How ridiculous. When he murdered me, did he think about the children? He never wondered whether someone like him, twisted and cruel, deserved to be their father. The news of my father's death quickly reached the village. Many people were shocked and saddened. The Parker family swore in front of everyone that they would never let Ethan be released again to harm anyone else. I was satisfied with that. At his memorial, my father's reputation, something he'd guarded so obsessively, finally served me just once in a way that mattered. I returned to Beijing that year, right after college entrance exams. The nation's focus shifted entirely to the Olympics. Back when I was still in graduate school, I had finally saved up enough for a down payment on an apartment within Beijing's Second Ring Road. Of my housing fund loan, I was able to buy property in the capital years earlier than I had in my previous life. When my mom heard about me buying a place, she got excited and started talking about moving to Beijing to live with me. Of course, I wasn't having it. Mom, don't worry, I'm not planning to get married. If I ever decide to have a child, I'll go abroad. Dad worked his whole life to build up his dignity. You should just stay in the village and enjoy that. Me, I'm the family's lucky star, destined to roam the world. I had my life all mapped out. In another year, I'd start copying ancient poetry for side income. In a few more years, I'd invest in some cryptocurrency. Big players like Allen and other major tech giants were showing great promise. Life was long and full of possibilities. There were still so many things I wanted to